Beware of speakers.
Oh no!
Oh, hello.
I'm aware of the
greetings.
speakers and
Monster Girl Maker. Okay.
hey guys, welcome to actually another Grandin cast. I am Scandal,
And I am Lies.
and we are here to actually not talk about this. We are actually here to talk about
Battle Angel Alita.
or known as also Gundam
in Japan.
Jan. Yep.
And the new movie, or what my impression is of the new movie so far, Alita, Battle Angel.
So most of what we're going to talk about, though, is basically a retrospective of what both of us remember as regards to the manga / OVA. I never saw the OVA. I don't know. I think you saw it.
Nope,
What it's.
I only saw the anime.
Okay, and I never saw the anime. I've only read the manga.
Okay, so
and I only read a little bit of the manga.
So the important thing here is that Monster Girl Maker is going to be used as just a visual set piece to this podcast. And what I want to focus on here, what I really want to talk about, is my emotional experience, especially as a memory in reference to this series. So the first time I saw a trailer for Alita Battle Angel, I was really uncomfortable and frustrated about it, like very badly, in reference to what I remember the series being. Now, I haven't gone back and reread the series because I read it probably 10, 12, 15 times when I was younger, and I've just had it in storage for a bit now. So what I'm going to do is basically explore the experience I had before seeing the movie, of what my initial reaction was to the movie in reference to what I got out of the manga.
Because the plan definitely is to actually, believe it or not, watch this movie.
So I'm not going to worry heavily about capturing every plot point difference of what I know of the movie so far and the, reviews or, like,
because we have seen some, because we've been deeply irritated. I will throw that out there right now. At least I've been very frustrated because the things that I understood about the manga, for the little bit that I've read, was not at all what they decided to fixate on in regards to Robert Rodriguez and James Cameron's, spectacular, sparkly vision of, Sparkle Darkle, so I have no clue.
So, but I'm not going to really be directly comparing plot points because I haven't seen the movie yet, or necessarily even in reference to what I've seen of all the trailers. What I want to do is go over my, essentially, experience of this thing that was an iconic piece of my own childhood, and the sort of disappointed, frustrated experience that I've had watching the trailers and seeing the build-up for this movie. So what I'm going to start with is, I hate Chosen One arcs. I really hate Chosen One
And what it
arcs.
looks like is the whole thing is a Chosen One arc.
And the thing is they say it straight out in the trailer. Alita, you're special, you're the Chosen One. And in the manga, that was never the case. Nope. She was special because they didn't know where she came from, and she was special because she was a survivor. Imagine a cataclysmic event where everything in the world is blown up, and one person survives, but you only find that survivor 1,000 years later. That's pretty unique. That's pretty distinctive. It doesn't make them special inherently as far as who they are, but it makes the circumstances of their survival special. In the same way that someone who survives a horrible, aggressive cancer is a survivor, and that makes them special in some way. So, in this case, Alita in the manga, based on my memory and my investment and everything, is special because she was alive. Daisuke Ito finds her in the scrapyard where he frequently looks for pieces to use in his doctoring business, and instead of being scrap material, she's a whole living person in stasis. Now, she's basically a brain in a box at this point, because mostly only her head has survived. But the thing is the brain has gone into a functioning stasis, and she's a living human being, and he's going, oh my god, I found a person. This is like someone who used to be a paramedic or a rescue worker walking through an age-old site where, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, something cataclysmic happened here, and you find another body and the person's alive. And instead of going, oh my god, someone tripped and fell here, and this is a modern, casualty, what was this person doing here? Right. You go, this is an original survivor from this original event. Oh my gosh. Now, in the movie, they, at least in the trailers, they make it very clear that they suspect she's from Teferis, which is the city in the sky. Now, they changed the names in the movie.
It's like Taylor or whatever the hell it was.
I don't even remember.
And there's Iron City.
And then Iron City is actually the scrapyard in the manga. Now, the thing is I will say that I have read and that the movie is supposed to be more based on the OVA. Like the OVA that they did.
And also considering the couple of interviews going, I really liked the OVA kind of thing, which is very weird to me.
And so the two people working on it were very excited about the OVA and the anime of Battle Angel Alita, which when I was more directly in the shared fandom of Battle Angel Alita, there was a strong experience of going, the anime is terrible. Oh my god, it represents the story so badly and removes the important pieces of it, right? And so I never watched the OVA, but I was having this experience watching the trailers and the advertisements for Alita and going, who are these characters? I don't recognize who they are. And there were several characters that were made up for the OVA to sort of string some individual stories together and make a cohesive movie experience that were never in the manga. Now, this happens frequently. If anyone's ever seen Coraline, they added an entire character so the main character wouldn't be talking to herself. And that's important because you're not in the character's head unless you're going to have their thoughts on screen or have them talk to themselves, which can feel very unnatural. Then it is important to have someone else there for them to talk off of. Even Neil Gaiman, the writer of Coraline, said this character made sense immediately as far as telling it visually rather than a written medium.
Yeah, pretty much. You needed to actually have basically a narrator or someone who explained more of what was going on.
Or someone...
Because you couldn't have the same amount of dialogue or interaction in someone's head because that would get way too weird. And it does in a visual medium versus, a written medium. There are changes you need to make. That happens. That's fine.
And so... First, I was frustrated before I knew it was based on the OVA, and then I was more frustrated because the OVA simplifies the overall plot a lot, from what I understand. Going and spoiling the OVA for myself and reading the synopsis, what was really important to me about Battle Angel Alita, the entire first 10-book cycle. Now, if you're a real Battle Angel Alita fan, you'll understand that the author, Yukito Kishiro, wow, I'm going to stumble over this, Yukito Kishiro went back and rewrote the ending. Basically, originally there was a 10-book cycle, and then he went back into part of the 10th book and started a divergent timeline and started writing again the series, because he had apparently wanted to go further with it, but hadn't been able to with his original publishing timeline. He had to wrap it up, because this thing was released episodically, as many manga are, into...
with a strict deadline.
With strict publishing deadlines, into a magazine, and then later published as gatherums, as complete novels. So I understand that he did that, and I have not explored the secondary, AU series, where it's a divergent timeline that, goes off of the first one, because I loved the first one so much. And sometimes you just don't want to spoil it for yourself. Sometimes you don't want to watch the sequel to a movie because a movie was so profound and worked so well for you, you're afraid it will spoil some of that value. Now, I have gone on and read his other works, and I still like them, but none of them had the same value to me as did Battle Angel Alita. Now, what's frustrating to me is a lot of what I'm hearing in reference to reviews for the movie itself, non-spoiler reviews, because I didn't want to spoil everything for myself, because again, I wanted to sort of have this separation of opinion between before seeing the movie and after seeing it, in reference to my feelings about the anime, and go, a lot of people are just talking about how violent the world is. And
I will say, as someone who casually really read the beginning, it was really freaking violent. Solidly. Totally violent. There's a lot of blood, there's a lot of gore in the original manga. It is totally there.
One of the things that sort of hallmarks what a lot of people got out of the original manga, that I never really connected to as being important as a piece of the story, was that one of the original reviews that I read was, it's not only where brains get splattered against the wall, but where people get stuck to the wall by splattered brains. And there is a scene where that literally happens. Someone gets killed by getting their head smashed against a wall so hard that their corpse sticks there, And that's pretty violent. On the other hand, there's not a lot of focus on giving you a visceral, emotional reaction to this violence, because it's all framed through Alita's experience. And the important thing about her experience is that she's very disconnected emotionally, which is really interesting, because she's at first an amnesiac. When she wakes up, she doesn't remember anything.
Yep.
And so she's this very seemingly blank slate for Ito to sort of build, slowly raise a personality from, sort of raise like a child, right? But the thing is she ends up having more and more personality as it goes on, and she has core beliefs and values that come through even as she doesn't have memories for them.
Right.
And the thing is in the very first manga, you don't know who Ito is, and you're in Alita's position. Even though he's the first character on screen, searching through, the trash heap at the center of the scrapyard, she is the primary focus character, and so things are filtered through her awareness. You don't see him really by himself after that point, only things that she can experience. For the most part, like, there are scenes in the manga where she's not there, but almost all of them she's there and it's her perception. Like, you get brief pieces of other things that she's not involved with that give you a little bit of backstory, but they're only connected together in reference to what she can understand as the story builds over the bigger picture.
Right.
And one of the things that was really valuable to me in building her personality and sort of disconnecting me from the violence of the gore is that she really admires Ito and really attaches to him emotionally, but he's one of the few people that she does attach to that deeply throughout the series. And because there are several, but there's only a few, really. And what he does is what she starts to be connected to really powerfully. So at first she suspects him of being a murderer because he's rebuilding her body, giving her pieces of a body, because again, she was mostly a brain in a face case.
Right.
And he keeps bringing her, arms and, legs and other things to rebuild her. And she's hearing about casually from his work partner that there's these murders going on of these, beautiful women cyborgs, right? And so she's looking at the pieces of her body and the fact that Ito leaves and goes out every night after she goes to bed to go do something. Mysteriously. And he takes a large case with him, right? And the thing is one night, completely of her own volition, stating that sort of inherent personality that she has, even outside of her memories.
And also going, she's kind of paranoid, going, who is this guy that has picked me up, kind of thing.
A little bit, or going, I don't want Ito to be a bad person, is more of what I remember. It's not so much who is he, as going, I need him not to be a bad person. He's the only person I'm really connected to.
Yeah.
And so I need to prove that he's not doing this, and if he is doing this, I need to stop him. And not like, oh my god, he's going to be a bad person, but more like, I need to stop him from doing bad things so he can continue being a good person.
Right.
Which I find very interesting. And so she goes out after him and follows him, right? And then her experience is that it looks like he is, in fact, going to murder someone, going to murder a woman. And it turns out that that woman is actually a monster, is sort of a ghoul kind of thing, that was the murderer of these other women. And Alita is sparked into a fight. She has in her subconscious this memory of an incredibly powerful fighting style that's not incredibly unique or special. It's just an older one.
It is. It's actually really uncommon, as far as I understand. They're like, holy shit, it's this thing that was really impressive, and it's very difficult to execute. Panzerkunst is supposed to be very difficult to do.
It's difficult to do, but not difficult to know. Like, it's not a secret fighting style that's, relegated to special people, that only get to know about it. It's the thing is you need an incredible amount of skill and coordination and a powerful cyborg body
to be able to withstand the effect of it,
Right, to be able to execute it without tearing yourself to pieces or simply failing to pull off the technique. And so the thing is even with her very civilian-style body, she does a very impressive set of moves and completely defeats this ghoul. And Ito's like, holy crap, I recognize that fighting style, and where the heck did that come from? And he's kind of excited, going, you remember something? And she's going, actually, I don't really remember anything. What was that?
Right, going, hi, beg pardon?
And then she immediately goes on this thing of going, hey, if I can fight, I want to be a hunter a hunter killer like you.
A bounty hunter.
Bounty hunter, which is the name for a bounty hunter. What Ito actually is
a bounty hunter.
In the daytime, he's a doctor, and at night, he's a bounty hunter, which is a sanctioned official job
that you can get from Teferis, right?
Yeah, from the legal system of the cities, which is controlled by Teferis.
Yep.
So you can actually, you will be employed as essentially the law and order, which is bounty hunting.
Right.
And so the thing is there is a law system in the scrapyard, and it is basically getting hired for this bounty hunter thing. And people often obey the law because otherwise a bounty hunter will come and hunt you down, either for turning you into the justice system alive or to kill you because that was the crime, basically the punishment for the crime you committed.
Right.
And so it's a really interesting legal system, but in this case, there's no illegal bounty hunters, and it is later actually brought up very, very clearly that bounty hunters have strict codes to follow. They have to follow the laws of their employment, and they have to have good ethics and basically work ethic as a bounty hunter. And so Alita's like, I want to do this thing that you do because I admire you and that would be great, right? And Ito's going, no, I want you to stay innocent and pure and fluffy and sweet and a girl because that's what I wanted, was basically a daughter.
I wanted a daughter. Yep, he very much takes on the father role, which I thought was cute.
He really did adopt her when she wakes up and has no memory. He goes, you're a child, I'll raise you. You know, he adopts her instantly. Like, my child kind of thing.
He's like, bye, see this, I could have this. Yep.
And so when she wants to be something outside of his vision, he resists it briefly. But then there's this really cool cathartic experience for both of them where he's like, I will give up on my dream and I will let you be what you want. And he literally throws this beautiful dress that he got for her off into one of the canals and sort of cries and laughs at the same time of going, but I want you to be who you are more than I want to have some weird vision of what I came up with. And it might be painful to give that up, but here it goes. And they built a very strong relationship in that way. And it's very cool.
Right.
But so Alita proceeds to be this hunter warrior, and if I just have to summarize the entire thing, the whole purpose for me.
Oh, but don't forget Hugo, because it's all over in the trailers.
No.
I'll
come back to Hugo.
Okay.
I'll come back to Hugo. But the whole purpose of this 10-book cycle, the whole purpose of Alita's story, and it is Alita's story, it's not other people's stories, is to examine what does it mean to be human. In the trailer, she asks Hugo, does it bother you that I'm not completely human? But the thing is I'm looking at the visuals in this trailer and in the multiple trailers they've released, and hardly anyone is cyborg.
Which is very weird.
She's supposed to be unique because she's a cyborg. And the thing is there were hardly any fully humans in the scrapyard. Now, there were a lot more fully humans throughout the world of Alita. And there are, of course, into fairies. But it was uncommon to be fully human. Almost everyone you saw had some kind of augmentation, whether it was just, an augmented eye, a replaced limb, it was a synthetic heart, like in the way that we want to be able to synthesize organs and extend life or, synthesize limbs and things like that, whether it's for damage or for essentially birth defect, whatever it is, or genetic limitation.
By the way, we are actively interested in genetics and what is it called?
Eugenics?
Eugenics, that one.
I was going to say, but not eugenics in the aggressive, controlling people and
we still are
kind of way.
Yeah, but we still have some of that problem. What the heck is this?
Not me.
That's fine.
Me, as Lies, is not particularly interested in Holocaust proportion eugenics at all.
I appreciate that. I'm just saying, socially, we are socially as
okay,
our
so
hierarchy
not we,
within
you, and me.
No, we as a sort of a society, sort of casual era of going, yeah, this thing
of selective breeding. If you don't know what eugenics is, it's basically selective breeding to try and produce a better genetic result.
Or you're going to actively go in and interfere with a natural process and dictate certain things based off of what we think is and isn't important.
And there's a whole bunch of movies about this, where they can create, higher genetic, value people, what have you. And, and then they have to be pitted against the normal people. But the thing is in Alita's world, in the manga, almost everyone is augmented. Cyborgs are the norm. Partial cyborgs are the norm. And Ito is actually interesting.
The eye.
I say Ito is actually interesting because he is fully human. And then the love interest, Hugo, is probably about 14 in the manga. I don't know if they ever explicitly state his age, but he is quite young. He looked 12 to me when I first saw him. So, but he's supposed to be more close to adult. But adulthood happens very young in the scrapyard. Quite young, because you really have to defend for yourself. Because the law system is not perfect and it is quite violent and aggressive. And if people don't catch you, one of the observers, then, you can do pretty horrible things.
Right.
And horrible things do happen. There are lots of murderers running around, which is why there's lots of bounty hunters to go catch them. And the thing is sometimes they get away with it for a while, and especially being super enhanced, as most people are enhanced in some way or another, and many people are super enhanced, there is this experience of going, it can be pretty challenging to catch these people. And Ito is especially interesting because there are no other purely human bounty hunters at all that I have seen in the entire series. But your normal barkeep has augmentation. His assistant as a doctor, who is just a doctor and not a bounty hunter, is augmented. Everybody he works on is augmented in some way. Okay? And so the thing is Alita is not special because she's a cyborg. She's not special because she is an amnesiac. She's not special because she survived, from an ancient war, which it turns out that she did. She's just special, really, because she's our protagonist, therefore the focus of our story, and because she knows a fighting style that's largely been lost, and that most people don't have the skill to learn anymore because there's no one to teach it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes a subject of focus that someone eventually does want her skill in that fighting style, but it is not Vector. Vector actually plays a fairly small role in the first couple of books and is mostly connected to Hugo's story, because Hugo promises to Vector promises to get Hugo to Teferis.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing about Alita when she's very young, which I will just say young in this case instead of very new, is that she latches onto ideas really quickly. The person I admire, Ito, is a bounty hunter. I want to do that. The person I admire / have a crush on, Hugo, wants to go to Teferis. I want to do that.
Mm-hmm. She's very impulsive.
She's very impulsive. She's very self-centered. And she's also very supportive in that way. I want to do what you're doing because I admire it that you're doing it. I also want to support your dream and join you in it, kind of thing. Going, the way that I want to engage with your dream is by doing it too. And I really liked that. But the overall picture of the whole manga is the question of what is it to be human. The big bad guy, if you will, the major antagonist, is really questioning what does it mean to be human. Alita's questioning what does it mean to be human, but she doesn't question it nearly as much until she encounters this antagonist at length and these various themes over and over again of, as she gets out into the big world outside the scrapyard, being a cyborg isn't as common. There's a lot more full humans, because that's more of scrapyard culture, because they have the technology largely dumped from Teferis to do it.
Right.
And so when she gets out into the world at large in the later books, there's experience of going, you're a cyborg, that's fascinating. And so they kind of take that and mash it into the earlier book and then remove a lot of the cyborg population and go, this is unique and distinctive. Also, one of the things that bothered me is the motorball experience. So when I originally heard that James Cameron wanted to pick this up, I went, oh God, that sounds super cool. And that was years ago.
Oh God!
And then
I instantly
read the
no, because I don't like James Cameron. I'm sorry, y'all, but
I didn't know who he was at the time.
Fine.
I just thought someone wants to make an actual movie out of this. That sounds great.
That sounds hilarious. Yeah.
Sounds super cool. And so what I did was then I went and read interviews and stuff because I was in love with this story, right? And in love with a number of these characters and a number of their struggles. More than the characters, I really admired their struggles. But Battle Angel Alita at its heart is really a character piece that is a huge scale sci-fi questioning what does it mean to be human? What makes us human? And I'm going to do a huge spoiler at this point. So if you want to jump ahead about a minute, you might want to do that because this is going to be a massive spoiler.
I don't care. Do it.
Okay? Is that the question comes down to, if we are a brain in a box, are we human? And if we are a box with a brain, are we? Or without, if we are like a physical body without a brain, are we human? So if you have a microchip in a human flesh body that is the brain, are you human? Or if you are just a brain with no human flesh body, are you human? Going, what makes us human? If the brain makes us human, then if you replace the brain with a biochip, does that still make you human? And that is the driving question, going, what is an individual? And later, they not only question what is human, but what is an individual, as there are copies made of Alita, to be this force that can all fight like she does. And that's a much bigger plot that's in there that's really beautiful, honestly, that I love. Going, ultimately...
noses.
They don't have separate noses?
They don't have noses.
Sorry,
I'm having this thing going. There are no noses.
There's no nose
in this specific set of kawaii desune.
Must have no nose.
Must have no nose.
So you've got eyes, mouth, eyebrows, details, horns. Yeah, no nose.
No nose.
All right.
Anyway, keep going.
I keep thinking the arrow's the nose.
Kind of do too.
Anyway, so that question of what makes us human and then what makes us an individual. Now, Alita's never painted again as a chosen one at all. She's never painted as somebody who is inherently special for who she is and what she is, or that is going to solve the world's problems. But there are a lot of people that are very interested in her, either because she can fight or because she has basically...
What her ability levels are.
Or because she's gotten in their way. which is interesting because she will meddle with things like crazy. At any rate, early on she did a lot of meddling, but also another giant spoiler. So huge giant spoiler. So we all know Hugo dies, because that's out and that's available as part of the major plot. But Ito dies. Ito is killed fairly early on in the series, and it's pretty horrible and it's pretty devastating to Alita. But before he's killed, he's kidnapped. And so she goes after him. And he's kidnapped because he's connected to someone else, but she happens to be connected to him. And so she goes and messes up this person's plans, which is how she gets connected to the major antagonist of the story, which ends up being the major antagonist of her story. And the thing is he says he's trying to understand karma, but what he is trying to understand is basically, what is the human condition? What makes us human? How much can you remove, take, or change, or, shuffle around and you're still a human? If you are just a hand, are you still human? If you are just a brain, are you still human? If you have no brain but you have a body, are you still human? If you have multiple brains, are you a singular person and still human? If you could copy your brain and make a backup of yourself and then fall into that backup, if you die, are you still alive and still yourself and still a human?
Right.
They're really interesting questions. And, Yukito Kishiro pushes the envelope very far with questioning these things, going, okay, but if this layer isn't the answer, what about this layer? What's the extreme you can go to find this answer? Anyway, and I like that a lot. She is leaking out her nostril that you've now found. That was amazing.
I gave her nose. I found a nose.
All right, cool.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah. She is bloody monster mess thing. All right.
Something.
It's white at this rate, so, you can take it how you will.
I'm taking it how I will, I promise.
At any rate, so what's primarily bothered me, and I'll just have to circle back around to a couple of points because I didn't organize this into a script, is that they really are going...
We have no scripts. It's all unscripted here at liesandscandal.com.
It really is. It's very live. It's much like radio DJing.
This is the point. And surprisingly, it's actually very difficult in radio DJing to be, a radio DJ.
And be very organized with your thoughts and cover things coherently.
Yep.
At any rate, keep going. So good job, Howard Stern, for that.
Right.
At any rate, one of the things that bothered me most was the Chosen One arc, but also what bothered me was when I heard that James Cameron was interested, I went and read some of the interviews, and it said he was specifically interested in the motorball circuit and depicting the motorball circuit. And the thing is you have to have Hugo's
There's nothing
story.
inherently wrong with the motorball circuit. Let's put it this way first to begin with. There's nothing wrong with the motorball circuit. There is, however, a problem with the motorball circuit because of the motivation behind the motorball circuit and that entire freaking arc.
So there's a really beautiful arc involving a really awesome character called Joshugen that happens in the motorball arena. Now, there are 2 books that cover motorball, and it's great. If I'm remembering this correctly, I'm pretty sure it's only 2. You have Alita's original story, which just involves her and her first villain arc, if you will, which is Makaku, which is honestly really profound. And
I am super disappointed they didn't go more into Makaku, because as far as I can tell from any of the trailers and in the interviews, so here's me jumping and going, Makaku was horrifying to me as a kid.
Yes.
Whenever I remember reading it, it was creepy and weird as shit. Right? So it's just like, what the hell is wrong with you kind of thing. And the fact that they go, it's this thing.
So in the anime, which isn't the OVA, in the anime, they wrote him out. They turned him into something else.
You're kidding, they did?
Yes. So what they did was they basically made it
bullshit.
A competition between Ito and some other super doc going, you made a monster, which is Alita, and now I made a better arena monster, which is this thing, which looks a little like Makaku, but isn't him, and we'll pit them against each other to prove who's the better cyborg technician. And that's what they do in the anime.
Oh my god.
Which is kind of dumb. But
that
that's
is
fine.
Incredibly stupid.
Not to drag on the people who made the original anime, but it was frustrating for me as someone who loved the first
I was about to say, it's probably also more frustrating, sorry, again, not to drag on, because some of that stuff can be super freaking interesting. However, when you know what the original story is and you would like to have the original story, that sounds weird as shit.
So Makaku, as the first villain in the first manga, kicks off the question of what is it that makes us human, and connects us ultimately to who's going to be the big bad, which is Destinova, across the 10-book series.
We're just going to spoil everything, though, by the way. So I just like, that's why I thought it was very silly for you to be like, but I don't, I'm like, just spoil it, it's fine.
It's all spoiler. This is not spoiler free. I don't know. But at any rate, but they're not doing a lot of these things in the movie. So it's not really spoiling the movie. It's just spoiling the book series. But honestly, even when I spoiled the hell out of it for one of my friends, they're like, no, I read it and it was still freaking amazing. And you couldn't even cover all the spoilers that would have been there because there's so much to it without getting lost in it. It's really good. Anyway, so you get this experience of going, the first book is a very good standalone. The second book is also a very good standalone, or the first two books work very well as standalones together. You can either read each one of them individually, and you'll be a little bit lost in the second one because it doesn't do a huge amount of building of Alita's history, but you can read it by itself. But the first one you can read completely by itself, and the first and second ones you can read completely by themselves, and you get to an ending. You get to the ending where Hugo dies, and it makes sense for the end of the story. Like, you can end there and go, I could want to know more about this, I could do more about this, but it's not required, right? And then they go into the motorball circuit. So book 3 is the beginning of the motorball circuit, and book 4 is the finish of the motorball circuit. So you've got this movie literally trying to squish 4 books into one movie.
When her motivation to go again to the motorball circuit, let's establish this because you haven't done it yet.
I was about to do it.
Okay, I'm like, then go.
So the thing is when Hugo dies, it breaks her down into a depressive, self-destructive fit. Think Twilight levels of self-destructiveness of I am crying and screaming out of bed, except for Alita is cocky and self-centered and really internally, like, motivated. So she drives all her anger inward, and I can't hurt myself. Maybe other people can hurt me. So she joins Motorball as basically, well,
which
it
is
might kill
what?
Me. Motorball is a sport.
No. And but how do they put it in the trailers that we've seen? Where they talk about, there are these guys, they're just criminals and they're just killing each other. But that's not what Motorball is at all.
Motorball is actually a sanctioned
It's a
sport.
freaking sport!
And the people who fight in it or play in it, honestly, are athletes. And while you can absolutely die in it, there's still rules in regards to it. And if you outright murder people aggressively trying to destroy their protective brain case, you can get in big trouble. The thing is yeah, people will die. They can die. They can, but they're not supposed to be trying to murder each other. They're trying to win. It's not a gladiator sport. It's a ball game. Literally. On a fast
high stakes
roller coaster skate track, essentially. It's as magical as Quidditch is, except for, 10 times as deadly, maybe 100 times as deadly, because not many people die in Quidditch.
Right.
And really fast paced and intense. But it is a sport at the heart of it. It is a sanctioned sport. It is legally allowed. You get to, have sponsors. You get to be in this. And the thing is she joins this in sort of a self-destructive fit of going, this is an incredibly dangerous sport. I can get out my angst, depression, and anger here.
And maybe someone will hurt me.
I might even die. How great would that be?
Because she's very upset. And
she leaves Ito to do this. Hugo dies and she freaking disappears. She never goes home. At the beginning of the third book, he doesn't know where she is. This is one of the few points where we see things where she's not on screen, right? We're seeing him wandering,
she's been missing,
trying to find her. And he ends up helping someone, Shumira, who recognizes him as a doctor, incorrectly, but also correctly, because he is a doctor, but she recognizes that for the wrong reason. And when he goes, hey, I'm looking for Alita, and shows her the hollow picture, she goes, I know who that is. She's she's an athlete. And he's like, what? And so she takes him to Motorball. And in the same way that some people aren't into sports and might not know what Quidditch or lacrosse or football or handball or croquet or cricket or whatever these things are, or polo even, might not know what these sports are. Right. He didn't really know what Motorball was. And so he sees it and he's like, Alita's here. And he tries to contact her going, oh my God, you're here. And she completely ignores him. She ignores him. She pretends like she doesn't even know him. Basically, she's so upset. And the arc of these two books is her going through this massive fit of depression and who am I and what am I doing, as well as trying to Ito trying to reforge that connection with her. And the driving force to her getting back to herself and snapping herself out of her sort of self-indulgent, pitying depression is this character, Jashugan, who is Shamira's big brother. And he's a freaking cool character that only exists for 2 books.
Freaking get rid of him as far as I understand, he doesn't exist in Motorball, which pisses me off.
Because I just introduced my friend here to Jashugan and his story arc, and they went, oh my God, he's freaking cool. And he's profound as well. And he's struggling with his own inner demons, and he's also struggling with a deadly, debilitating disease.
Right.
But it's a disease of the brain, so he can still do motorball. Now, the thing is he is the motorball champion.
Mm-hmm.
He is king of the motorball circuit, and he will, in fact, fight with his body disabled, or do the sport with his body disabled. With one of his arms removed, he's so damn good at it that if he's not handicapped, he will always win, period.
And they specifically are like, you mustn't do this way because, well, it's unfair.
So he'll take one arm off to make it easier on the other competitors.
Mm-hmm,
and the thing is,
pretty hilarious to me, honestly.
Since Ito is connected to him via Shimura, and helps him as a doctor, he brings him back from a flatline attack. One of his, basically part of his condition, his brain condition that he is dying from slowly, Ito saves him. And then, basically, I've taken you on as a patient, but now I'm going to sort of support you in trying to defeat Alita because maybe it'll bring her back to her senses, right?
Right.
And so there is this interplay, this strong, interesting social interplay where Ito is trying to save this new person he's just met, but really for selfish reasons of trying to get Alita back into his life and also sort of rescue her from her own self-destructive fit.
Mm-hmm, because she is really well and truly depressed. Like, I remember reading, so for me, I will say I pretty much read only basically most of the first 3 books. I don't remember all of it in its entirety, but yeah, I'm just like, there's so much that I feel like from watching the trailers that's not in the movie. And like, her being playful and stupid in Motorball seems ridiculously out of character for her. Be nice, go easy on me, guys, is like,
it's my first time, that sort of thing. And then Ito being there and talking to her and going,
about Motorball is weird as shit!
Because they didn't talk to each other
at all
when
she
started
threw a
Motorball.
fit because she'd saved Hugo's life. Right? She gets him a new cyborg body, and now he can't go to Teferi's. So one of the rules with Teferi's is you actually can't be there unless you're fully human.
No.
Right? Is that
you can't be there unless you're born there. Period. It's a caste system.
Okay. So
not
basically,
even fully human. You have to be born there.
Right.
Period.
And the thing is they're like, okay, so everybody's dream though is to go to Teferi's, right? The city in the sky.
It's a myth that you can go there.
It's the mythological. Yep, and they
can't actually go there. Except you can, sort of. Vector is lying to Hugo, but he doesn't mean to be, in the sense that he wants Hugo to work for him, but he eventually thinks he'll grow out of his childish urge or desire to go to Teferi's and do something different. Like, so Hugo is working as a criminal, Alita finds out he's working as a criminal, and then, just the same way she did with Ito, tries to reform him. Tries to go, you don't have to do this. There's actual valid non-criminal work that you can do and make this kind of money.
'Cause can do.
Yeah, and so she's really, really positive in that way about people she cares about, going, but you can just get better and be a better person.
But I can just save you. Yeah.
At any rate, the motorball circuit doesn't have the same meaning that it did in the book unless she's there because Hugo died and she's in a dysfunctional disconnect with Ito. She put herself there. She was fully competent fighting there and getting into leagues before Ito found her. And there was no connection between them other than he literally picked the best player in the entire league against her with the intent to destroy her and get her back. That is what's going on. Like, that's it.
That is dad trying to get child back.
The child is having an arrogant fit of self-indulgent sadness, and he does understand that she's sad, but also that she's doing something horribly self-destructive, and the way he can connect her to get her out of it is if she's defeated.
And she is depressed. She is solidly
genuinely sad and depressed that she lost her first best friend and her first love interest. Okay?
Because the thing is, she's one of those characters that in original old classic manga format, and also you still see with older movies, and sometimes you see with other movies, basically where you have the character go, I will indulge you, and I will, pretend that, oh no, see, you were successful, but actually I'm the badass that beat this thing.
Okay, so there's something really cute that happens. It's also very, very silly when she meets Hugo. When a hunter-killer comes after him, a bounty hunter, because he is breaking the law. Alita goes into fight mode because she sees them, right? And he goes, I'll protect you, because he has no idea she's a fighter or a hunter-killer, right?
Right. And so she's a bounty hunter, yep.
And so he jumps in front of her, and she immediately goes, oh, my goodness! And she puts on if he wants to protect me, I need to be helpless. Kind of airs.
It's super funny.
And it's very funny. And eventually things come to terms and balance out, and he realizes she's powerful, and she gets a little embarrassed about it, but also they make a good connection in that way and do fine.
Right.
But initially she really is like, if he wants a helpless girl, I want to be liked by him, so I'll be that helpless girl.
Right.
Like, she really does I have a crush and I want to please my object of interest, which is very common amongst a lot of people, going, I'd like to be likable by you, and if this is because I like you. And if this is what you like, then maybe I can do that. You like people who are into manga? Sure, I'll try manga. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I will. I'll give it a shot.
You really like action movies? We should go see an action movie. Let's do it.
Yeah, you like. Okay.
Sure. And it's not a deal breaker, even if it's something you're a little uncomfortable with or not familiar with. You try and check it out because it's important to someone you find interesting.
Right.
Anyway, so that's very cute and funny. But the thing is she's in Motorball because Hugo died and she's trying to destroy herself.
That's what she's doing.
She doesn't speak to Ito because they're in a social fight with each other.
Because she's going, no, I'm going to do my own thing, screw you, I don't want... And also, I think after a fashion, honestly, I feel like her falling out is also going, I don't want you to be here because I want to hurt myself.
Right, and she doesn't want him to see her destroy herself. She's not there for that reason, to try and hurt Ito, because she's not trying to hurt him. She left him behind because she was, disconnected from everything, and she didn't want to go home and throw a fit at him, from what I understand. But they don't go into it in great detail, because, again, this is her story, and... basically her as the character present, narrator or consistency throughout this really much bigger story. At any rate, I'm really unhappy with what they've done with the movie. And in the past, when you take 4 books of a series and squish them together, I'm not going to mention a series of unfortunate events. Oops. It usually goes badly.
Really?
When you take many books from a series and squish them together, you often lose context. You lose depth. You lose the value of nuance and subtlety that's there.
Right.
And the really beautiful things about this series that I loved, despite its violence, which I really felt like the violence wasn't something important about it, going, wow, this is a really violent, action-based anime.
As a lot of people kept going, in some of the reviews of going, it's super Mad Max-like.
It's really action-oriented, the intense fight scenes everywhere. I was never really connected to the fight scenes in Alita as being super important, other than that's a piece of who she was a fighter. And that ends up being an important piece of her history as well. Mm-hmm. That she really was a fighter. And that she has been, Mm-hmm. And that ends up not driving her, but helping her discover who she is at a core by getting connected to that piece of her history as a fighter as well.
Right.
And the thing is I didn't feel like the violence and the fights were a major piece of this manga in reference to that's what makes it so cool. I didn't feel like it was a major battle shonen like Dragon Ball Z. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like it was like that, like Bleach.
I will say that I don't feel like it was either, considering how much, actually, I have most of the original manga for Dragon Ball Z, surprisingly, and I really don't feel like Alita was there at all. It had way too much character drama going on.
It did. It had a lot of character development.
For the little bit that I read, so I have to throw that out there.
On the other hand, the first 2 books is, more than a fifth of the series, because there's only 10. Mm-hmm. Is it a fifth? Literal fifth? That's a fifth.
Yes.
Yes, so it's 1/5 of the series. So it's not really that small. I mean, if you cut a pizza into 5 slices, you still get a good sample of the pizza. Mm-hmm. And you get a pretty good feel of what this is about. You just don't get the major overarching plot mm-hmm. in the first 2 and 3 books.
Right.
You really get into the question of what makes us human, which he filters in slowly. I felt like it was a really good storytelling of bringing in this experience slowly of what makes us human, and of connecting Ito to this bigger picture of Teferis and connecting him to Destinova, who really is at the cost of everything trying to figure out what makes us human, because he doesn't know how to function as a person if he can't figure it out. So he's just poured all of his life into it. Mm-hmm. And there's actually some really sensitive, powerful character development at some points between the contrast of him and Alita. But Alita really was, as a person, very confident, very impulsive, very arrogant at points and self-centered, and really was emotionally disconnected from a lot of people. She was very emotionally unavailable. She'd be friendly, she'd be polite, she'd be cordial, but she didn't really invest in very many people. And when she did invest, she went all the damn way. She went through everything to try and get Ito back when she lost him. She just about destroyed herself to try and save Hugo when he was trying to die, when he was, near death the second time. And she did go through everything to save him the first time, because he's mortally wounded, and she figures out a way to save him from the bounty hunter system at large.
On Japan!
And save his life. So Your first small antagonist is Makaku, and he encompasses the first book.
Right.
Your second major antagonist is Zapan, and he shows up in the bar Kansas.
So fucking funny.
In the first book, actually, and then goes on to be a really much bigger story. Interestingly enough, in reference to her, but there's really something funny that illustrates her basically arrogance and self-centeredness really clearly. So even in the trailers for the movie, you see this person in a bar, and he's like, "Ha, this thing," and she grabs him and slams him against a table. That's pretty accurate for the manga too. Like, she's in Bar, Kansas. She shows up and she's like, "Hey, I'm a hunter-killer too. You know what? Don't mock me." And they're like, "Oh my God, you're such an idiot.
And also you're a child, I think is
you're
basically...
a tiny little girl and you're in a big boy's world. What are you doing?" And Zapan sort of leads it as this sort of ringleader, like, of discrimination against what it takes to be a bounty hunter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she beats the heck out of everybody and rolls them
because
in a
of course she
ball
does.
Out the door. Foop! They're all together, sort of a Katamari-style ball. Foop! Out the door, out of Kansas, right?
Yep.
And the thing is Zapan's deeply offended by this, like profoundly offended by this. But when he shows up later to interfere with her trying to save Hugo's life, he's like, "You remember me? I'm your nemesis." And she's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Oh my God!" He's completely floored that she doesn't remember him.
He pulls a Nicolas Cage, because I really like that someone was like, he's totally goddamn Nicolas Cage. Like,
someone did a fan cast and visual, like, screen cap comparison of Nicolas Cage's faces that he's made in various movies versus Zapan's drawn expressions in the manga.
And they were like, he needed to be.
And it's beautiful.
It's
They're
hilarious.
like, the worst sin of the movie Alita is honestly that they didn't cast Nicolas Cage as Zapan.
Pretty much.
He was made for that role.
It's brilliant.
It's brilliant. At any rate, so there's this incredible, like, really small piece of character exposition of basically how self-focused she is on her own experiences in reference to Zapan showing up and going, I am your nemesis. You are my nemesis. I'm going to ruin this thing for you. And, you know.
She's just like,
she's like, "Who are you?" And he's just like, "What?
How
could you
not
remember me? How insulting, how disgusting, how offensive." Like, the height of offense, right?
She's pretty bad, honestly.
But the thing is she honestly doesn't remember him. She's not even mocking him. She's just like, huh? And he goes on to be later a much larger villain and a really sort of meaningful story. And one of the things that's really interesting about Alita is that thing where I mentioned her emotional disconnection. Well, she connects profoundly when she connects. And one of the things that she does is with every one of the major villains that she fights, if she ends up destroying them, they end up with sort of a soft, profound, thoughtful end. It's been talked about before in other movies.
Painful, honestly.
That's honestly painful for the reader. In her first one, fighting Makaku, he is, as Scandal said, this terrifying, intensive, horrific villain. He literally eats people's brains to get him, like, an amphetamine high off of their endorphins.
This is specifically for the hypothalamus of getting the adrenal glands, and I can't remember.
Don't specify exactly what
I thought they did. I'm pretty sure they did.
But that it is, it could be that they specify which one it is, but that he needs more endorphins, specifically. They don't say which endorphins, I don't believe. And so he's eating people's brains to get this endorphin high to get through the pain that is his literal existence. Think classical Little Mermaid, your legs are stabbing pain when you walk. His mechanical body causes him pain. Stabbing, horrible pain, agony. He has chronic pain. He has a medical condition of chronic pain.
He does.
And he treats it by eating people's brains.
He does.
And the thing is, so he's self-medicating by being a murderer. And there's more to it that makes him more horrifying, that makes him more dark as a villain, but also that makes him very interesting as a villain. But as it gets to the end of the fight between him and Alita, where she does ultimately kill him, she connects with him too. She damages him so badly that he's dying slowly, and she's about to kill him and realizes that he's dying. So she doesn't do the killing blow, and instead there's a bit of story exposition and a bit of profound emotional connection that happens in that last, like, few seconds or minute before he dies. And you end with this very contained, one book story, where she is emotionally moved, and she doesn't even understand why. She doesn't even necessarily understand the connection they just make. She's still very new to this world. She's only been essentially born with amnesia and grown up into this thing in the space of one book, which is a couple of months, maybe a couple of months long, maybe not even that long. There's not a really clear timeline. It could be anywhere from a few weeks to a couple of months.
Right.
And that's the whole entirety of her life. And she says at the very end of it, whether it's like from sadness or from regret or from some emotion I cannot explain, I am moved to tears. And she cries essentially over him after he dies in this really thoughtful, self-examination kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And as a reader, I was like, this affected the shit out of me. And it wasn't about the violence of their battle, the intensity of the coolness of fighting, her using a plasma ray against him, or the Panzerkampf, or him having his mechanized blades that he fights her with.
With the whip hands that he has, that he stole from the champion of the arena.
Which is another sanctioned sport.
Uh-huh.
Another sanctioned actual sport.
I'm a geared.
Anyway, and so that kind of profoundness, where each time she defeats a major obstacle in her life, even if they seem to be a completely mindless, aggressive monster of destruction, like they are
huge
literally
fucking
just
asshole.
this
like really,
horrible...
Makaku is a huge fucking asshole. Like you feel for him in the end, but I'm still like you are.
But
huge
you have really no connection to him before that,
douche canoe.
other than that he is a horrible monster. Like he's meant to be a one-dimensional, all they want to do is fuck shit up, horrible monster. And you go, all right, one-dimensional horrible monster, and you're going to defeat them. You're my protag. Go get it. And then you find out, not in a, let's rewrite him with an edgy backstory kind of way, but in a thoughtful, expositional way that he's more than that. And Alita connects to it. And since she connects to it, you as a reader connect to it. It's not one of those things of you could pull this out on your own and go, hey, there's more to this. Your literal protagonist connects to this experience and has it. And you go, oh my God. And so for me, even though there's pages spent on this fight scene between them, it is building character exposition that then leads to this finale that leaves you heartbroken for something you don't completely understand, because you don't really feel sorry for him dying. You don't really feel like, he got a bad lot in life by being this thing. So much as you go, there's some kind of profound injustice here and some sort of piece of examination of the tragedy of the human condition that's hard to put into words, and I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's honestly the beauty of the manga that I feel is completely missed in the movie. And I don't know.
As far as we've seen
and I don't know if it is. But since they don't deal with that story, and they don't deal with Zapan's story, and they don't deal with
Jashugan.
And they don't deal with Jashugan's story, who is actually a protagonist-antagonist, which is kind of fun. He's not an anti-hero at all.
Yeah.
But you root for him, and you want him to win, and you also, there's this... He's something for Alita to defeat, but he's not a bad guy. Like, it's really...
They actually end up respecting each other quite a bit.
There's a really profound connection that happens between them as well. And again, in the final fight between them, which isn't bad guy versus good guy, it's literally two opponents trying to find something greater in themselves in a meditative kind of experience. They make a connection. They strike a connection that snaps Alita out of her self-depressive fit. And honestly, there's this funny little piece where Ito is like, yes, I've got her back! Ah! But also there's this tragedy of Jashugan's death.
Yeah, it was pretty hardcore.
And Ito's crying for success and for that tragedy all at once.
It was pretty bad.
It's pretty profound. And the hallmark of this series is, again...
Bad in the sense of sad.
Profound. There's a lot of, for me, profound experiences over and over again in the series that I cannot get over the emotional weight and value of, and that I haven't seen a lot of other people connect to. And I'm going, what else is there? This is what this series is to me.
And so...
And Alita's cavalier dismissiveness of the value of human life sometimes, and literally singing and swinging a bag of heads to go deposit them and get money as a hunter-killer is not ruining that for me at all. It still is even almost more profound when she makes connections, because again, she's so disconnected. And that doesn't make her less of a person, but it makes her a really stark contrast as a focal point for this series. And the character that they play on screen doesn't seem to be that character at all, except for in the amnesiac period, where she is very childlike. And she stops being very childlike very quickly in reference to violence and, fighting and murder, but she also stays childlike in that way of going, she doesn't understand the gravity of murder. She doesn't connect to the fact that I'm killing real human people when I'm killing these criminals. I'm just literally collecting their heads to get chips to go to fairies. Whee!
Hey! Wait, what?
And that is honestly very childlike in and of itself, because connecting to the value of others and their own life and their value as humans is a more mature connection, in the way that kids will sometimes damage animals or hurt each other, and until someone else cries or they lose that living thing, they don't realize what's going on. They're not connected to it.
They're really not.
In the way that you hear a lot of high school students or junior high students go, God, I wish they would just frickin' die. You hear social justice warriors online going, God, they should just go and die. They're so horrible people. And they're not really thinking about a whole complex person dying in front of them. They're kind of thinking of, well, this thing should go away. There's not an emotional connection. And one thing that I find, like, just to sort of wrap this up, that emotional connection is an interesting piece, as far as just going, have you had responsibility for another human life or not?
Yeah.
A lot of people who have had to raise a child, whether it's one of their siblings. I grew up in a very poor neighborhood in very poor circumstances. I knew kids who, even if their parents were around, they raised their siblings. Period. Bar none.
That's
You're the
what you do.
oldest sibling, you work, you raise the kids, you help balance the checkbook, you whatever it is, and your parents are kind of a mess because they're children themselves. And if your household is going to make it, a lot of times you have to step up and be the adult if your situation is going to get any better than it is. And often it keeps getting worse if you don't step up, simply because there are more kids and your parents' limited resources that got them to where they were are taxed more by each additional child. And so I knew the kids that I knew that raised their siblings were very sensitive to the value of human life, largely, even if they were abusive to their siblings in some regards, or if they had abusive family situations
I like to say,
that were disconnected.
I feel like inevitably you're going to, though, be anyway, because that's very difficult. Like, you're having a child take care of another child. This is a person who never had a choice or whatever else. This is why, at least I advocate very strongly of, like, think really hard and really extensively about, what you actually really want out of your life with having another person, bringing another person into your life. Do you really want this kind of thing?
But that piece is ultimately another conversation. But what I want to drive at here is essentially people who have been responsible for another human life and have connected to it often have greater sensitivity to the weight of losing a life. Yeah. Whether it's somebody who's raised dogs and tried to save puppies in, a breech pregnancy, or somebody who's worked at a pet shop and watched animal after animal die that they were supposed to keep alive, or somebody who's worked in a nursing home, or somebody who's had kids, or somebody who's a doctor or a nurse or whatever it is. Some of them go the direction of going, this is a job, and you just throw away the corpse when it's done. But most of them connect more. And if you have someone in a dramatic emotional situation, they can be profoundly sensitive to the question of should someone live or die, and going, okay, well, I might solidly disagree with their views, but that doesn't mean they should just be murdered.
Right.
That kind of thing. Or this might be a horrible person in this car crash, but you can't just leave them there, get the jaws of life.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Where you go, it doesn't matter if they are the antagonist, if they are the villain, now that they're being crushed by that building, I need to save them. The life. Yeah. I need to value the life. And there is a lot of contrast in that overarching question in Battle Angel Alita of what is it that makes us human? What is it that makes us who we are, an individual or a life at all, a person? There's a contrast between what is the value of a human life as well in these connections she makes with the people that she has to ultimately kill, or does kill, or causes the deaths of, depending on the circumstances, as well as the aggressive, violent, visceral nature of the scrapyard itself, where people are dying constantly, where people are being murdered by aggressive cyborgs, people are being murdered because of cramped conditions, and people just going crazy under these conditions.
I've always thought it's really interesting when you've always talked about this. Sorry, I'm going to drop this in, because part of it actually reminds me of some of my issue, basically, with the Berserk series. So while there are things I definitely like about Battle Angel Alita, there are plenty of things I also get incredibly frustrated by, because mechanically speaking, I keep going, how the hell do these people basically keep constantly surviving?
And in the Alita universe, which I'll be real quick so you can get to the Berserk point, there's a lot of death, but there's not so much death that it's going to basically tax your population. because you have a law enforcement system, you have doctors, you have
that
medical
Zapan
technology.
goes off about, right?
And the thing is and you see it in action through Ito and through Alita hunting down these people that are killing people. You see the populace at large being protected, and it's a huge populace of millions. Go ahead.
But that's the thing, Fleur. I always sometimes I got to this level of basically being incredibly frustrated because I felt like basically the death becomes meaningless. There's so much of it, it doesn't logistically start making sense at all. It just starts sounding like, well, how much damage can we cause? How much destruction? Well, it's
how much
just
shock
terrible.
Is there?
Yeah, like, where are you going with this? Well, of course it's gonna happen, blah, and you're just like...
And at some points, you look at a series, and when they go, everyone dies all the time, constantly, you go, where are your people coming from? We don't have a birth rate that's high.
There's no fucking way.
There's no sustainability.
There's also the fact, too, of people basically being under that level of trauma. They're not going to have that many kids. Period. That is just literally impossible. They talk about basically impoverished places all the time, that the more stress and the more destruction you have...
And the more starvation.
The less your population basically exists. So,
however, I felt in Alita it made sense. There was death, but it wasn't rampant death to the masses, except in some of the larger story arcs. And the thing is those were dealing with different areas. When you got to the really big bad guys, like when you dealt with Chaos's story, and this revolution to bring down to fairies, which is a pretty cool plot point, honestly, and is another big bad we have to fight. You deal with this experience of, there's going to be a war, there's going to be a lot of damage, there's going to be a lot of death, and they notice it, they recognize it. The author does pay recognition to how many people are dying, and even the big bad in this case does, going, there is a mountain of corpses already that this city is built on, we're just going to make a new mountain and start the world over.
Right.
So, to actually wrap this up.
Yeah.
What I want to drive at is that there's a genuine sensitivity in the contrast between here's cavalier loss and destruction of human life, where somebody literally can just kick a child in the street and they will die. And of course, that is illegal, but it depends on whether or not you're caught. And there are people dying in the streets of poverty and of drug addiction and stuff. And then there's also this connection to thoughtfulness of how many people have died from the system we have right now. How many people need to die, and individual fights and, deaths going, this is still an important person that added to and had their own experiences, in the world, and let's recognize that for a minute.
All right.
And so I found that contrast between the absolute senseless loss of human life that's never recognized to the absolute weighty value of some lives that are lost being measured really valuable, really important and meaningful, in contrast to we're trying to examine what is a human and then what is the value of a human anyways, and that as a background works really well.
And that also definitely does not feel like what the movie has gone for at all.
It doesn't feel like
which
that's
is
what they're driving
very
after.
freaking frustrating. Let's be real.
And so I'll just wrap this up of going, I profoundly love this manga. The first 10 books in the series, before he diverges off into a separate, AU sort of additional examination of what it what it is to be human, what it is to be, what makes us what we are. I find really valuable, and I would absolutely recommend. And there's a ton of things that I didn't spoil, didn't cover, didn't even touch on. There's so much that goes on here, but again, it feels well handled.
Right.
All of it feels as though it isn't rushed and doesn't sell people short, and really focuses on each of the individual stories it tells, and ultimately does impact or tell the story of Alita while telling the story of humanity at the same time. Anyway, thank you for joining me for this rant and going, ta-da! If you didn't, if you were interested in this game, you could go check it out. It looks like it has a lot of options. Mostly, I just wanted to use it as a set piece, since Alita is made out of constructed pieces that other people put together for her. It seemed fun to have a constructed Build-A-Girl kind of visual set piece to it.
That never happens.
Sneezing. Achoo.
Habatu.
Nope, I lost it.
All don't think about red hammers.
Sad, right? And so that is why I chose this. But if you wanted to just listen to this as a podcast or any of our other grinding casts, the visual isn't really important to what the speaking is, and a lot of podcasts don't have any visual at
At all. Nope.
And so for me, I'm like, it's an option. You can just minimize it into the corner of your screen and listen to it, or you can look at this thing and also have a visual experience of something to interact with while you are hearing this story. So that is just a sort of stylistic choice we've made together of going, if we're going to do a podcast, we're going to also have visual.
Well, because we can do that. You know what? We can grind at the same time.
And we can also, games that we're playing in that do require a lot of grindy advancement, we can do that at the same time and knock that out.
Hence the grinding cast.
While we're casting, while we're thinking and examining our thoughts. So my name is Live.
And I am Scandal.
And it was very pleasant to have you along with this. Please recommend us to your friends and or to other people you think would be interested. If you enjoyed this content, please check out the rest of our channel, where we have very ordinary let's plays, as well as game reviews and more grinding casts where we discuss topics of interest and or even just read pieces of books and critique them, doing basically live vlogs of the books themselves.
Because we like stories, we like plot, we like character, we like development. Holy cow, if this wasn't really obvious by the end of this, I don't know what to tell you, birdies.
Yep. So if you wouldn't mind either liking or subscribing or sharing this video to help us sort of find a larger audience, or just giving us commentary or feedback, it would be greatly enjoyable to either.
Yeah, save us from the algorithm.
All right, and take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye.